Hi guys, it's Konrad Bobilak here, CEO of Investors Prime Real Estate and author of Australian Property Finance Made Simple. And welcome to today's video. A lot of times I get phone calls and emails from clients saying, I'm about to buy in a brand new house and land estate. In fact, just today I got an email from someone from Western Australia asking me whether they should be buying in Craigieburn. Is that a good estate? What do you think of it? Etc, etc. Now, I always say that buying a owner-occupied property is an emotional decision, and when it comes to investing, it's purely a financial decision with no emotion, purely to make money, and I stick by that. So really, wherever you want to live wherever you want to live, whether you like apartments, townhouses, house and land, whether you like the beach, the mountains, or regional, it doesn't make a difference. But when it comes to investing, there are fundamental clues, if you like, that you need to stick to and be aware of if you want to make capital growth, because ultimately houses are not designed to go up in value. See, houses are not deemed as an asset class under the Financial Services Act. They're not designed to go up in value like a bond or a stock or an annuity. These are instruments that are designed to go up in value or down in value depending on what the underlying company or resource or asset is that is linked to it. Properties are not made to go up in value. They are made to house people. Now, as investors, we're trying to make money out of something that wasn't designed to go up in value. Some suburbs happen to go up in value, but they're not designed to go up in value. And what we do is, as investors in Melbourne, we look at the 420 suburbs that look up Melbourne, and we're trying to work out why did these areas go up in value 10%, these do 6%, these do 4%, these do 3%, these do 0, and these are negative. Because like South Bank and Docklands, they just keep going backwards. And remember, negative doesn't mean you've got to have negative return. Zero return is negative because inflation is 3.5%. So I made a video today talking about the fundamentals of supply and demand and the impact of supply and demand, stock being available in a particular area, and its impact on pricing. And I want to show you areas where there is an oversupply of stock, potentially, and there's no capital growth. And I want to show you areas where there's virtually no stock on the market and there's massive capital growth and people are fighting over very limited stock. So as an investor, this is a very important video for you and a very important topic for you to really understand and grasp, because it does cover the challenges that we have in new house and land estates when it comes to supply and demand, and the challenges that we have as investors and owner-occupiers trying to buy into suburbs where there's virtually no stock available. So this is a really cool topic that I wanted to cover. By the way, if you are interested in house and land estates, make sure you watch my other YouTube video called The Great Australian House and Land Trap that talks about price manipulation and price control stage releasing by developers, which is kind of what I'll cover today as well to some extent, but that just deals with it in a very, very different way. Before we go any further, I want to just do a bit of a disclaimer, and the disclaimer is very basically my results aren't typical. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by promising you or implying in any way, shape or form that you're going to become successful or build a large property portfolio like I have. But I'll show you exactly what worked for me and others and give you some pointers on how you can implement similar strategies in an event that you find them congruent with your risk profile, investment time horizon, etc. Definitely implement them, because ultimately, guys, the only person who's going to make you wealthy is you. The more you know, the lower your risk. The less you know, the higher the risk. A couple of things about myself. I am a mortgage broker, a real estate agent, and I've got a background in finance, banking, and financial planning. The most important thing is I'm a property investor. I'm keeping it real. I'm in the market every day, just like you guys, buying properties, dealing with tenants, refinancing, doing all the things that I talk about. So my videos on YouTube are not based on theory. I'm not an academic. I'm actually a person that's doing it. And I'm just giving you guys some pointers and lessons that took me 2 decades to acquire. And that way you don't have to make mistakes and you can fast track your results and get, and build those large property portfolios that will create financial independence, which is what I want you guys to do. I'm also the author of the best-selling book, Australian Property Finance Made Simple, which you can buy by going to my website, which is bookonfinance.com.au, or Amazon, or any good bookshop around Australia. If they haven't got my bookshop in the bookshop, tell them to bloody get it, okay? You can also get it on eBay for about $10. I'm sure there's someone selling it on eBay. I don't know. I'm guessing, potentially. Now, let's talk about Melbourne. Whenever people start drawing circles around the city, I get very concerned because it's not the circles around the city that make you money. It's actually the area, the part of Melbourne. If you look at Melbourne, the Bayside and the eastern suburbs have the most concentration of money. The red dots here represent people with more money, and the green dots represent household incomes that are the lowest, and it's the cheapest properties. So basically Melbourne, you can see it's the eastern suburbs and the Bayside that has the highest concentration of wealth in Melbourne. Not only that, it has the best schools, best transport, best shopping strips, best cafes, best of everything, and limited supply of land, and also the highest income per household, meaning the highest capital growth in Melbourne is concentrated right here, and it's very unlikely to change in the future. There are spillover effects sometimes, and I'll talk about that at the end, but that's very unlikely to happen in Melbourne. If you look at the income required to purchase an average household, this is the dark blue patches represent people with the highest income per household, and that extends right up to Park Orchards and Donvale. And there are pockets like Portsea, Sorrento. There's a lot of wealthy people in Frankston South, for example, Oliver's Hill. So it doesn't have to be close to the city, but majority of the suburbs are very close to the city. And you've got Williamstown, for example. You've got North Melbourne, places like that are very expensive, Richmond. So definitely as an investor, you've got to be aware of these are the areas that you want to be buying properties in, and you want to be staying away from areas which have the lowest household income required to buy a property. If you look at the Melbourne's best schools, for example, this is a heat map. So if you're a predator out there and you decided to, rather than identify people by the heat signature, you decide to work out where are the highest ranking schools in Melbourne, and you're doing the thing with the predator, this is what it will look like, okay? You can see that there's a high concentration of the best schools in Melbourne, in the eastern part of Melbourne, the Bayside. And let me ask you a rhetorical question. Do people pay a premium for houses located in the best school zones? Yes or no? Absolutely. Will people pay a premium to be located in McKinnon, next to McKinnon High Public School, which is one of the highest ranking schools in Melbourne, but it's free? Yes, absolutely. Now, if you look at the school ranking from 100 to 92, you can see that just as a visual map, majority of the best schools are concentrated here. And obviously this is where the best capital growth occurs. And people pay a premium to be located in the best areas with the best schools. Hence, that's where we target. Now, if you look at income demographics, weekly household income for the highest in Melbourne is Park Orchards for a family, which is $2,660 per week. Plenty, Cremorne, which is Richmond, Ivanhoe East, Wonga Park, Canterbury, Waterways, Kangaroo Ground, Brighton. I'm very suspicious about Brighton and Toorak not even coming up here because these are where all the millionaires live. West Hawthorn and Kew, right? Obviously, they've got really good accountants that minimise their tax and income, and Warrenwood. If you look at individual weekly income, per person, Richmond and Cremorne have $2,500, East Melbourne, Port Melbourne, Middle Park, Toorak, Elwood, Albert Park, St Kilda West, Clifton Hill, South Yarra. So these are people that earn the most money in Melbourne, and therefore, if there is scarcity of stock in these suburbs, they will pay a premium for housing. That's why in Richmond and East Melbourne, you see, regularly speaking, you see articles written how there's another record broken for a house and how people pay $500 above median price, etc. So what really determines property prices, and I've done a lot of YouTube videos just on this topic, and I want to give you a summary. It's really scarcity or lack of supply, so no supply, no availability of property, combined with demand by the right demographics. And the right demographics in terms of capital growth are people with very high disposable incomes. Therefore, by definition, the definition of low capital growth is unlimited supply of land, so there's no scarcity, combined with demand by the wrong demographics, which is people with very low incomes, which is your fringe suburbs. and I'll talk about specific which areas they are. Now, here's something very interesting that's happening in Melbourne. And not only in Melbourne, but in Australia, Australians are holding onto their homes twice as long as they did 10 years ago. In fact, and there's three reasons why that's happening. There's three different reasons, but which I'll talk to you about. The biggest one being stamp duty is so expensive now. You see, 20 years ago, if you were in Brunswick and you had a house for 150 grand, let's say it was a three-bedder, okay? It was a weatherboard Victorian, okay? On a nice 700 square metre block. And let's say you wanted to extend the property and you needed a fourth bedroom, whatever, for kids, just for lifestyle, and open up the back. Rather than extending and renovating the property and living in the mess for a year, or even longer, what you would do is you sell that 150 property and buy a property for let's say 175, 190 with 4 bedrooms, okay? Stamp duty would have been 7, 8 grand, no problem. The problem today is a 3-bedder in Brunswick will cost you 1.5 million, 1.2 million, and then if you want to upgrade, your stamp duty will be $100,000, $150,000, depending on the property. So rather than people upgrading houses now, they want to renovate. So renovations went from 10, 15% 20 years ago up to 60% in some suburbs. Because stamp duty is so exorbitant now, it's better for you to stay where you are and just renovate, extend, go up and go back onto the block. So because of that, if you look at this graph here, the average household period for houses and units has risen considerably over the last 10 years. So in 2009, the average property would sell, and the green line here is for units, which are apartments, and the black line is for houses. The average house in 2009 would be held by people for 7 years, the average apartment for 6. As time goes by, people are holding onto properties longer and longer. So for apartments now, 2019, people are holding up to 9.5 years. Have a look at houses. It nearly, say, 11.3. And this is the average. There are suburbs now in Melbourne where people are holding onto houses for up to 17, even 20 years, especially in the eastern suburbs and the Bayside. See, people get to a point where there's 3 reasons for this. The biggest one is that people are priced out of their own home. Let me repeat that. People are priced out of their own home. Now, so what happens is, let's say you've got a couple on 70,000 each, so 140, let's say 2 teachers, okay? They're on 70 grand each, and 10 years ago, they bought a property in Bentley for 700,000. Just got in, okay? And it's a California bungalow. Today, that property is 1.7 million, okay? Because properties have gone up by $1 million in Bentley for detached houses in the last 10 years. They can't afford 1.7 million, and they can't afford to upgrade either. So they are priced out of their own home, meaning they are never leaving their house again. So a lot of people that bought in 2006, 7, 8, 9, which is over 10 years ago, in eastern suburbs in the Bayside, on average incomes, and they just got in at the right time, they are literally now priced out of their own home, meaning that they can't upgrade and they can't leave. Therefore, they're not selling. That's number one. Number two, and because wages have stagnated for 10 years, the average capital growth in Melbourne is 8 to 10%, but wages have done nothing. They've virtually gone up in 10 years' time. So there's a massive discrepancy between, wages going up and properties going up. Number two, people just like the area, they like the schools, and they have no reason to move because they can't upgrade. Like once you get to Balmoral, you can't upgrade. Once you get to St Kilda, you can't upgrade. Toorak, you can't upgrade. Hawthorn, you can't upgrade. Kew, you can't upgrade. There's no other suburb that is better than that suburb. Williamstown, you can't upgrade. So they get to the pinnacle suburb that they wanted to live in and they stay there longer and longer because they can't go anywhere else. Number three, as I mentioned before, is they want to extend and upgrade, but they've worked out that an extension renovation is cheaper than selling the property and paying stamp duty and then looking for a comparable property. So therefore, more people are extending and renovating and basically living where they are than upgrading their property. And that's why holding periods have extended and increased, which is incredible because at the same time, we have a falling ownership rate in Australia as well. Now in 95, 94, 70% of people own their own home. Now it's down to 66%. So as young people are entering the market, they're not buying houses anymore. they're renting and investing. And it's interesting, I'm 43, and my generation, when we finished uni and got our first job, which for me was 20 years ago, we were conditioned to go out into the burbs. You know, you get your first job. My first job was at Australian Uni Funds Management. I was on $32,000, which is ridiculous today. But anyway, that was really good income, 20 years ago. And so most of my friends went out to the burbs, Pakenham and Berwick, wherever, Cranbourne, buy their own house. And then they just travel back and forth to the city and stay miserable for an hour each day, stuck in traffic. The kids today go, no, we don't want to do that. We'll stay in Hawthorn and South Yarra in really cool apartments and internet cafes, eating our smashed avocado and drinking our almond milk cafes and cappuccinos, and we'll rent the apartment and we'll invest somewhere else. They're not going out further like we did. They're not going 100 k's from the city. Smart. So home ownership has decreased, especially in the young generation, and they're renting and investing and making money that way. Some of the areas where you have the highest, longest periods of time where people are holding on to houses, you have in Victoria, you have Monash, 17.1 years, Queenscliff, Whitehorse Council, 16.2, Manningham, 16.2, Knox, 15.7. It just goes on. I mean, it's just getting longer and longer. And I think Glenira, so really good areas. And this is going to increase to 20, 25 years. Eventually, what you're going to find in the eastern suburbs and the Bayside is people are literally not selling at all. And that's why when you jump onto realestate.com, you see such a discrepancy in volume between these suburbs and brand new house and land estates. So let's talk about the so-called growth corridors. And I don't know why they keep calling them growth corridors, because there's no growth and there's no corridor. So stop calling them growth corridors. They're just house and land estates on the fringes of Melbourne. These are the boundaries of Melbourne. So this here is Melbourne, which is geographically landlocked by a river. You've got the Dandenong Ranges here and mountains. You can't build property over here. Here you can pretty much go indefinitely to New South Wales and to Adelaide. Now, because of that, and I've mentioned this on other YouTube videos, the government has locked up the urban growth boundary in Melbourne by this purple line. Beyond this purple line, you can't rezone land from rural to residential. Here you can build residential property. The dark patches here are land that's been purchased by 10 large developers, predominantly, who have the majority of the stock there, and they hold on to these blocks, and they've got 25 years worth of stock roughly held in the dark patches, which means they can release that stock tomorrow, which means there is no scarcity of stock in these areas. Now, I have access to over 96 house and land estates currently in Melbourne, and the reason I've got these is because people can't say, well, you're just talking about these areas because you don't sell real estate there. Well, I actually do sell real estate there, so if you want to lose money in any of these estates, just give me a call and I'll sell you a beautiful 5-bedroom house with 5 bathrooms, and I'll guarantee you won't get any more than 4% growth per year. Now, the challenge with these estates is when the developer releases an estate, they don't just release all the blocks at the same time. They stage release each stage. So let's say stage 1 here is released at $300,000 per block. What they do then is release stage 2 at $330,000 per block. So it's gone up by 10% in, let's say, 6 months. And it's true, mathematically, you can't argue with that. Mathematically speaking, and I did a whole video on this is called price-controlled stage releases. And they say, look, stage 1 was selling for 300, stage 2 is 330, 10% growth. People go, gee, that's great. So if we buy in stage 1, we're still in stage 3, we're going to make 10%, 20%. No. What happens is, this is not true capital growth. This is manipulated, price-released, price-controlled releases. Whenever you have a market where 80% of the properties are sold at a primary market, primary meaning directly from the developer, that's not a true indication of capital growth. The only way you can analyse the true capital growth of an area is where 80% of more properties are sold at the secondary market, which means there is no more developer stock. It's all just houses we're selling in the open market. And then you're going to see the true indicator of capital growth of these estates. So a lot of people have emailed me stuff saying, well, Konrad, you did a video on this. and you said this area is going at 3%, but I've actually seen, I've got stuff from the developer saying the area is going at 12%. Yeah, it's gone 12% because developers have increased prices by 12%. But you try selling a house in the open market. Go to Ray White, Hawkins Stewart, whoever's operating in the area, and find out how much your house will be sold in Point Cook or Truganina or Tarneit or Berwick, and then work out your capital growth from the day that you bought the property. That's what I'm saying to people. So I'm not arguing that developers can increase prices and work out mathematically how much they increase the price by. Anyone, you could be in year 7 and work that out. What I'm saying is that's not capital growth. That's price manipulation. Developers are in on it, valuers and the banks are in on it, because the banks control the project ultimately, you know. So this is how they do this. They release each stage 1. Stage 1 suddenly gets sold up. Stage 2 gets released at a higher price point. And then they create this frenzy and this illusion of capital growth. And this is where people lose so much money on investing in these estates, because they think they're getting capital growth, but it's not actually true capital growth. Okay? So what's happening with that is, and it's a bit of a thing when you look at it, because it's the only market that I know of. You can see the red line keeps going up and sideways. It never goes down, and yet the green bars represent volume of sales. See how sales dip sometimes? But the red line only goes up or sideways because it's manipulated by the developer. Developers will never decrease the price of a brand new block in the estate because he can sabotage the whole estate. They will never do it. And the banks won't allow them to do it. So here, for example, you've got a situation where new blocks of land have actually been reduced in price. Right, they've dropped in price, but the real price has, volume of sales, but the real price has continued on sideways. So this is where they were selling nothing. And I've seen situations, I've got friends that actually work with these developers, that they sat there in the space where it's selling 1 property a month, sometimes 0, you know, and they won't reduce the price because they can't. So even when prices drop by 50%, volume of sales drops by 50%, the prices remain the same. That is, by definition, market manipulation. I mean, if that's not market manipulation, I don't know what is. Because really what should happen is volume drops, price should drop, respectively with the volume, but it doesn't. In fact, look at this. Volume has dropped, prices have gone up. Incredible. It's the same thing for Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth and Hobart. It's the same thing. No matter what happens to the volume, it always, the prices keep going sideways and up. Now the challenge is, and I want you to do this activity for yourself if you're watching this video and you're skeptical, jump onto realestate.com and type in Point Cook. How many houses are there on the market? Just do houses, don't do surrounding suburbs. Truganina, Tarneit, Craigieburn, Mernda, Pakenham and Berwick. Have a look at how many houses are listed. Then jump onto realestate.com and type in Albert Park, 6 houses, West Melbourne, North Melbourne, East Melbourne, South Melbourne, Elstonwick, Elwood. Think about the supply here and the supply there. Infinite supply, extreme scarcity. Demand by low-income earners, demand by extremely high-income earners. Massive capital growth, virtually no capital growth. It's very simple. The biggest lie I hear in real estate is population growth creates capital growth. Population growth never creates capital growth. It has to be the right population growth. Truganina in 2011 had 166,020 people. By 2016, had 221,895. That's 33.7% growth, off the charts. This is Truganina 2011. This is Truganina 2017. The problem is all these houses are identical. Right? There's no differentiation between these houses geographically, and there is no golden mile in Truganina. It's just Truganina, right? So at the secondary market, there is no market for a 2-year-old Metricon home, okay? Because you can always build beyond that suburb. There's always infinite supply. No one wants a 2-year-old house. They want a brand new property. This is predominantly first home buyers. And that's why in 2012, which was the last downturn. We had the peak in November 2017, but the last bottom of the market was 2012. These suburbs suffered. So these are the amount of properties that were released Hoppers Crossing, TRUGANINA, Tunneat, 4,048 homes. Cranbourne, north, south and west, north, south, east, west, Sandhurst, Skye, 3931. Mernda, Doreen, 3718. Derrimut, Point Cook, Werribee, 2961. Pakenham South. Melton West. Roxborough Park, Craigieburn, Clyde North and Epping. I actually like Cranbourne and that whole Sandhurst Skye section. I think they're actually very good estates, very good community. You also need an infill area. You've got Frankston, you've got the Beach 11 Ks from there. You can actually go to Southland Shopping Centre. You've got pretty much everything there. So there are exceptions to the rule because you can buy properties around townships or schools where you will get 6% growth, 7% growth. You just won't get the critical shortage where you're getting 10, 11, 12% growth, which is what we want as investors. So I'm not saying these are bad areas to live in, guys, okay? Living is an emotional decision. I'm saying for capital growth, there is too much volume of stock available from developers that can be released in these areas to create any scenario where there is no stock on the market. And that's the issue that I have with these estates in order as an investment vehicle. There's nothing wrong living there, okay? Because your community could be there, you could be happy living there. I'm just saying that there is too much volume that can be released tomorrow that can saturate the market. And this is what happens when you get things wrong. If you look at the national top 20 suburbs, this is 10 years capital growth to November 2017, which was the last peak of the market, back 10 years. So 2017 to 2007, okay, 10 years growth. If you take out Sydney from the equation, this is the top 20 national suburbs, okay? You look how many in Melbourne, take out Sydney from the equation, you're left with the eastern suburbs and the Bayside. Mont Albert, 11.8% growth. Baldwin North, Middle Park, Mont Albert North, Ashburton, Baldwin, Waverley, Doncaster, Mount Waverley, St Kilda West, Box Hill South, Dippendy, Camberwell, Blackburn, Surrey Hills, Box Hill North, McKinnon, Burwood East, Canterbury, Ashwood. All around the 10% mark, which means they double every 7 years, which is exactly where your money parked. The opposite is true for house and land estates. Melton, which has the highest population growth in Victoria, 2.5% growth for 10 years. Now, inflation was 3.25. That means that Melton is going backwards. People are actually losing money in Melton. So if you buy an investment property in Melton, how are you going to get equity in that property to leapfrog from one property to another? It's virtually going to be impossible. You know, Cardinia, Greater Geelong, it's the same thing, 2.9%. Wyndham, you know, Williams Landing in Wyndham, 3.2%. South Morang, Truganina, Lara, Whittlesea, Point Cook, Druin, St Albans Park, Tunneat, all below inflation. Live there, don't invest there. That's all I'm saying. If you're going to invest there, be prepared for extremely low returns. And that's what this video is about. Now, people said to me last time I released this information, oh, you just picked the most expensive suburbs in Melbourne in your top 20. Well, no, I didn't, because Toorak didn't make the top 20. It only grows at 7.4%, and that's the number one most expensive suburb in Melbourne by capital growth, which is $3.2 million per property. Middle Park made it, Dippendy made it, you know, Canterbury made it, Brighton didn't make it, 6.9%. Melbourne didn't make it. I mean, Brighton and Toorak, that's it pretty much. They're the two main suburbs in Melbourne, and they didn't make it. So it's not the most expensive suburbs, it's just the suburbs that perform well made it, and the ones that didn't make it. Remember, guys, I'm not a developer, I'm an investor. I don't have an agenda here. I have no vested interest in any of these suburbs to go up or down. I'm just telling you, this is the reality that no one's talking about. You know, I'm a real estate agent, I can sell in any of these suburbs. I'm not a developer, I haven't got a project or a suburb to push and convince you it's a great suburb. But that's exactly what developers do, because they usually sell one suburb, one estate, and they want to make it as sexy for you guys as possible. Now, this is the challenge, and this is public information. Developers are holding 13 years of supply to boost prices, and these are publicly listed companies. For example, Sunland, average number of blocks sold per year, 644. Average number of blocks held in land banking, 4,857. So Sunland is holding 8 years worth of supply. FKP, they are holding 14 years worth of supply. Villawood, 6 years. Mirvac, Average land lot sold per year, 2,332. Number of blocks of land held in land banking, 26,379. That's 26,000 homes. Think about it. That's 11 years of stock. Pete's probably one of the best builders and Mirvac and Metricon in Australia. Pete's got 44,000 blocks they're holding on to. They can release tomorrow. 17 years worth of blocks that stock they have available. Do you know how long it will take for St Kilda to sell 44? I don't even know if there's 44,000 homes in the Bayside area. I mean, it's all now subdivided to apartments and townhouses. This will take a century to turn over, and they could release it tomorrow. So remember, where are these blocks currently? And this is Point Cook, by the way, in 2010. This is 2018. But what's the difference between that house and that house? Nothing. It's a commodity. That's why it doesn't go up in value. Okay? Now, I don't want to get emails anymore about, you don't know Point Cook, I live in Point Cook, we have friends there, we go to the park, we have great schools. Fantastic. We're not talking about livability. I'm talking about supply and demand. Okay, so supply and demand meaning, how can this property go up in value if these developers that have 17, 15, 12, 10 years worth of stock that can release beyond Point Cook at any point in time if demand rises high enough to justify them releasing. So what I'm saying to you is these dark grey patches, that's where all the stock is held by these developers. And these are the areas you don't want to invest in if you want to have high returns. The areas you want to do invest in is the inner city, locked up suburb with no more supply. And by the way, do not touch apartments in Melbourne. It's a complete disaster as well. I've done lots of videos on apartments, why it's not a good time to invest in apartments. So capital growth isn't based on population growth. It's based on scarcity of stock supplied by the right demographics. Remember, the main thing is to keep the main thing. And it's to stick to the fundamentals, guys. This is investing 101, supply and demand. Remember that. If you want to make money, it's got to be simple. And the simplicity of the thing is target areas where there's no more land being created, no one's got any land, i.e. St Kilda, Elwood, and massive demand by wealthy people. That's the definition of capital growth. Definition of low capital growth is infinite supply, i.e. developers sitting on 15 years worth of land, blocks that can be released tomorrow, and demand by low-income demographics. And that's the definition. Now, remember this. Where are we going to be 25 years from now? Because really, it's about you and what you do right now. Now that you've got this knowledge of how the market works, what are you going to do about it? Because, and the fact that you're watching this YouTube video on house and land estates and supply and demand tells me that you're serious about property investing. Otherwise, you'd be watching one of Joe Rogan's podcasts or one of the other great shows that's on YouTube that I watch. The average home in Australia may cost up to 6.3 million just 25 years, a bombshell study has revealed. This is from Aussie Home Loans. Projections show median house prices will reach that figure in Sydney by 2043, up from 1,030,000 today, which is incredible. The Aussie Home Loans and CoreLogic survey predicts the average price will hit 5.8 million in Melbourne, 5.8 million for the average detached house. Now remember, Melbourne median price today is 800,000, just over. 5.8 million. And this is only in 25 years by 2043. So remember, you're going to make 5 million per property that you buy on average in Melbourne if you buy the right property in 25 years. Not a long time. 2.9 million in Canberra, 2.5 in Perth, 2.3 in Brisbane, and 0 in Adelaide. I'm kidding. The reason these are lower is because the population growth is lower in those cities, and also there is more supply that can be released in those cities. They're just smaller by definition. Sydney, Perth, Melbourne, Hobart, 2.2 million. I love Hobart, beautiful area. Darwin, Canberra, Brisbane, Adelaide, 1.9 million. This is by 2043. Think about the median price currently in Adelaide, how much you'll make $1.5 million on average per property, per detached house. And the national is 2.9 million, which is incredible. So think about this. If you had a crystal ball, let's assume, this is as good as it gets. That's the future. You would know where you are today based on your income serviceability and the state that you live in. It's up to you now to secure your part of the game. It's incredible. And remember, be fearful when others are greedy, be greedy when others are fearful. It's my favourite saying by Warren Buffett. Do the counter opposite of what everyone's doing. Do you know what everyone did in Melbourne 2 years ago? Bought a block of land in Point Cook. And now all those taxi drivers are trying to offload them on Gumtree because they can't settle them, because they secured them with a deposit bond or a bank guarantee or a credit card, and now they're worth 30 grand less than they bought them for. They're trying to offload them. There's something like 6,000 blocks of land now being advertised for sale in these new estates. Remember, the top 1% of Australians own more wealth than the bottom 70% combined, because they know things that are different. Oxfam Australia has released a new report revealing the wealth inequality is still on the rise in 2018 and getting worse. The 2018 report comes out as new data shows the wealth divide in Sydney is becoming increasingly pronounced, with doctors and lawyers clustering in neighbourhoods close to central business district, and essential service workers such as police, nurses and teachers being forced to settle in outer suburbs where property is more affordable, as reported by Fairfax Media. Of course, if you're a lawyer or doctor in Melbourne, you're going to be living in Hawthorn, Toorak, Brighton, close to the city, in the most prestigious areas. Why wouldn't you? You can live anywhere you like. And that's why as investors, you've got to be aware of that, and that's where you want to park your money. The main report relies on data from Credit Suisse, shows the level of wealth which is 1% grew by 23% in 2017, up 22% the year before. The top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 70%. And I can guarantee you one thing, it shows that inequality has been on the rise over the past 2 decades, with the gulf between the amount of wealth held by the top 1% and the bottom 50% now at the greatest time of ever over a period of time. The rich are getting richer at a very fast pace, and the bottom 50% and the middle class are losing money because the only asset they have is a house, and now home ownership is on the decrease. And it's just falling continuously, and this is the reality. The wealth share held by the top 1% in Australia has been growing almost continuously over the past 2 decades, and it's been diminishing and continuously falling over the past 2 decades for the bottom 50%. Over the decades since the global financial crisis, which feels like it just happened yesterday, the wealth of Australian billionaires has increased almost 140% to a total of $115.4 billion last year, yet over the same time, the average wage of ordinary Australians have increased just by 36%, and the average household wealth grew by 12%. 12% versus 140%. Guess what the rich are doing? Building businesses, buying residential property, buying commercial property. The richest 1% of Australians continue to own more wealth than the bottom 70% combined. And I can tell you now, the key determining factor is real estate ownership. Get some real estate, get into the market. We're at the bottom of the cycle in Melbourne, 6 o'clock on the property clock, about to go into a upturn. This is the time to get educated, get a team assembled, get a plan together, and then act. With caution, but act. If you're not going to do it now, when is the perfect time to do it? Ask yourself. So what suburbs in Melbourne am I focusing on? I always get asked, where are you researching now, Konrad? What are you focusing on? Fundamentally, I always target the eastern suburbs and the Bayside because that's where the money is, that's where the schools are. However, if you want to know where I'm targeting now, it's Heidelberg West and Heidelberg Heights, which are 2 suburbs that are underdog suburbs. These are predominantly housing commission suburbs. The housing commission units have been sold up to the private sector, and these suburbs are bordering on some of the best suburbs in Melbourne, like Belfield, Ivanhoe, Eaglemont, Heidelberg. You know, I mean, these are great, great suburbs. You've got phenomenal schools there, great shopping, great transport, and then you've got these 2 suburbs that are really housing commission, ex-housing commission areas. Now, what I mean by ex-housing commission, this is the average house that we're talking about. Now, this is 9 to 11 k's from the city. So I'm looking at a lot of townhouses because developers are snapping up these blocks, and these blocks are 600 square metres to 900 square metres, and they're building these brand new beautiful townhomes, and they're very affordable just for now. Eventually they're going to go through the roof because you've got properties that are backing onto some of the most best suburbs in Melbourne. You know, this is upper middle class territory. This is, for example, in Heidelberg West, and it's a completed townhouse, 4 bedrooms, 769,000, which is number 2 of 8 Canimbla Court in Heidelberg West. Beautiful property, just completed now from the developer that does a lot of properties in the area. Beautiful kitchen, 4 bedrooms, you know, amazing location. So the kids that grew up in Ivanhoe, Eaglemont, you know, Heidelberg, and they can't afford to buy a property there for 1.7 million, what they can afford is half of that, and this is the areas they're targeting. So, you know, next 3 to 5 years, this area is going to go through extreme gentrification, and it's going to go from a tired housing commission area into a blue chip, really upmarket suburb. The thing, guys, is you got to get in at the beginning before it happens. And only in the last really 10 years have I had the foresight and the skills to identify these areas and identify undervalued areas before they become overvalued. I did the same thing with Altona Beach, Newport 15 years ago, 10 years ago, when I was telling people to get into those areas when they were still rough and people were laughing at me, you know, Altona Beach, why would anyone live there? Look at it now, it's all brand new townhouses, you know. I was selling 4-bedders there for $450. Now they're selling for $950 to $1.2 million. People have doubled their money in those areas, you know. I mean, Williamstown's always been good and expensive, but Altona, Newport, 15 years ago was a nothing area. It's all weatherboard properties falling apart. Now it's all brand new townhouses. Well, Heidelberg Heights and Heidelberg West in the next 5 years represents the best opportunity in my mind to get into the market. So if you're interested in finding out more about these areas and how you can secure these properties, from as little as $600,000, give me a call, drop me an email, and I'll send you some properties that I'm sourcing. This is the typical configuration of a good townhouse. You have 3 bedrooms upstairs with en-suites, master bedroom having built-in robes as well as an ensuite, and then downstairs another bedroom that can be used as a study or an office with an ensuite, open plan living, bit of a courtyard. People don't want courtyards anymore, they don't want gardens, they just want to have a small area where you can have a barbecue, have some friends over. This one has a single car garage, the other one's had 2 lock-up garages, 769,000, 100% completed. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. So that's where I'm sourcing, because I'm getting a lot of emails saying, Konrad, which areas are you targeting in Melbourne? Well, they're the 2 suburbs that I'm targeting in Melbourne right now in September 2019. But fundamentally, I haven't changed anything in the last 10 years. I've always targeted the same areas. Nothing's really changed. Now, if you're interested in learning more and spend 2 days with me and some other experts on property and how you can build a large property portfolio that can give you financial independence, join me at my up-and-coming Real Estate Investing Fast Track Weekend, which I run in Melbourne 10 times a year. I'm doing one that's coming up now in October, and there'll be probably one more in November, and that's it. I usually take all of December off and go for a holiday, or swim in my pool, drink beers and watch UFC. Day 1 is property finance and due diligence, and it's a classroom environment. It's all based on a lot of content, a lot of charts, formulas. We'll teach you everything about how to buy properties, how to select them, how to buy them in trusts, negative gearing, cash flow analysis, how to identify the best financial structures, how to maximize your borrowing capacity, and how to pay off your home loan in record time without taking any risk and build a large property portfolio with standalone properties. Day 2, we take you out into the bus and we drive around Melbourne, show you some of the best areas to target, and we actually go through some specific projects, and we do a lot of research and due diligence on the ground with myself and Cameron Fisher from Changing Places Real Estate. Cameron's been in real estate now for 35 years, having been a valuer and a real estate agent and having done 5,000 successful auctions. So he knows just a little bit about the property market. So it's an amazing 2 days. Day 1, due diligence and research in the classroom environment. Day 2, out in the field. These are free events, but they are limited to only 40 people attending per event, and they do get booked out really quickly. So if you are serious about investing, do whatever you can to make it to the next 2 before the year finishes off. And I run them right here in my office in St Kilda. And that's it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel and get those alerts for future videos that I release. And also grab a copy of my book on Amazon or bookonfinance.com.au. Also, as a special bonus, just because you've watched the whole thing to the very end, definitely get a copy of my free home study online, which is 13 hours of viewing, absolutely free, nothing to buy, very simple to use. You can just click on the videos and watch all the information, and you get a 265-page manual, which contains all the PowerPoint slides, absolutely free, instant access right now. And I've made it available because I just want to give back to you guys and make sure that you don't make any investing mistakes. So that's for you to download for free. You just got to scroll down below this video, click on the link, and you can be watching that information within a few seconds. Thank you very much, guys. This is Konrad Bobilak. I'll see you on the inside.